You know what an Osage orange tree is. I was cutting down a big Osage orange tree, and I guess all of a sudden it decided to fall, and I wasn't expecting it to fall that time. So I was surprised, and I had my chainsaw running, and I started to run away from it, and instead of throwing down my chainsaw, why I kept a hold of it, but I let it down along the side of my leg, and it cut a gash to the bone in some places, probably about 8 inches long. And so I had a hurry trip to the hospital in Liberty and stayed there a day or two, and got sewed up. And now there's still just a little scar there.
Don was interesting. He was lucky. He was in a situation, probably the casual chainsaw operator was going after an Osage orange, I believe it was, kind of fence post. And that's usually how most landowners, they'll do something and see that occasional task. Probably the most common injuries that you'll have is kind of like what we had with Don, in that they don't put the chain brake on. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the moving saw, so you'll get cuts to your leg, or just the fact that the kind of kickback that you can get, you're clearing brush and the saw hangs up, and so you get a lot of, you can imagine, anything below the waist. The other area that you'll tend to get a lot of injuries can be, and those can be the nastier ones, the kickback, where the saw, you're operating and that saw comes back on you like that. Some good protective equipment to have. For starters, chaps, chainsaw chaps, and you want to make sure that they're the right size for you, that they go from their waist all the way down beyond the top of your boot. And the way you measure that, that's really critical, from the outseam, not the inseam. So if you're a 34-inch, 34 length, then no, it's probably more like 40 inches. So you measure from the top of your belt on the outseam to get that proper length. And I like the wraparound all the way from your knee down. It wraps completely around. The next thing I'll have will be a good pair of gloves, particularly ones though that are flexible, because if I'm cutting firewood or if I'm clearing out a fence row, then I'll want to protect my hands. Professional harvesters, they necessarily won't. They'll want to feel that saw a little bit better, so they don't necessarily wear gloves. Then the next thing I'll do is go ahead and have the full helmet with the muffs, and then the guard, so it comes down. Well, a good pair of chaps are going to be about $100, and this helmet kit that you saw here, they run around 50 or 60. So okay, you're into 150 versus what? Don said he was in the hospital for 2 days, and I imagine that's well over $150. The other thing that I'll have is a good first aid kit, and you can get the little cause pads, the sterile 4x4 pads. Those are good if you're going to nick yourself with a pocket knife or whatever, but really what you want to have are these larger trauma dressings that you'll have, and that way you can, if you get cut, you can put direct pressure. The other thing I'll have along with my first aid kit, I'll just carry several bottles of water. This is my emergency eye wash station. So modern saws, they'll have a number of safety features built into them. You can't operate the throttle until you hold this release down. Here's your throttle, here's your release. So that stops you from, you have to have full control of the saw. The wraparound bar, so you can maneuver the saw in a number of positions. There's also one that you have, as far as, like I said, you've got springs in here, so you got a little bit of give in this. It's not the old saws didn't have any kind of suspension in them, and so after a couple hours of cutting firewood, you could really feel it. You get fatigued again. Another one that would have is there's a little chain catcher right here at the bottom, and that's if the chain would break, it doesn't come back and catch you, it catches it down here. But the big one is this chain brake. When you're operating a saw, so you make sure that it's on. When it comes back, that releases it. And so if I'm moving, if I've got the saw running, I put that on before I take a step. But what I do is I'll test that brake, whether it works. And if it's my saw or if somebody gives me a saw to use that day, that's the first thing I do. And if that chain brake's not working, I walk away from the saw. I don't use it. Big box stores, they probably don't have somebody there that can really make sure you know how to properly maintain and care for your saw. That's why it's always better to go to a dealer, because their reputation's on the line. They're not going to let that saw leave their shop unless you know how to operate it and how to maintain it. You know, how do you avoid accidents like Don's? And that is, it's the old adage, if you fail to plan, you're going to plan to fail.